The first speaker is Mr. Seamus Maye, who we heard a few minutes ago. He's a competition consultant and a member of the Public Banking Forum of Ireland and founder of International Small Business Alliance. And we'll also be listening to Rémi Charrier, who will be speaking on behalf of the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund. Mr. May, you have the floor.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us the opportunity to say a few words today. It's been an intriguing afternoon. We feel very lost. I can speak more about Ireland than about any other country across Europe in terms of banking. But small business has felt very lost and left out in Ireland for many, many years. And to hear about all these financial instruments and the EIB funding and all the EU funding, it's very, very encouraging. But, and I can find no fault of any of the work or anything I've heard today in regard to that. But with regard to Ireland and going forward and developing SMEs, we have huge problems. Just to put people straight on the Irish economy, if we actually strip out the foreign direct investment, and of course many argue that we provide a tax haven for global corporations, whether that's the case or not, it isn't for today. But if we strip out foreign direct investment...
C'est beaucoup dit, en effet.
I didn't hear...
Bit of an overstatement.
If
que ça s'était beaucoup dit que l'Irlande était un paradis fiscal. Saying Ireland is a tax haven is a bit of an overstatement, I think, really.
Well, that's I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that many argue that it is. But the point I want to make is that if we strip out the foreign direct investment, Ireland's economy is actually on its knees. And, you know, the contrast between the Irish banking, the structure of the Irish banking market and, say, Germany, it's huge. Ireland is now down to 2.5 pillar banks. We don't have any public banking. We don't have any community banking in Ireland. We do have credit unions, which are very restricted. They're not allowed to loan to SMEs, to limited companies. There's restrictions on the amount of money you can invest, up to 100,000, and they're not allowed to do mortgages. And the trouble that the Irish banking collapse caused to the social economic fabric of a country cannot be underestimated. And what we're doing in Ireland is we've taken the pillar banks and we've said, OK, we've got to get these guys back up on their feet. So we're allowing them to charge the highest interest rates in Europe to small and medium enterprises and indeed for mortgages. And this is counterproductive. This is not going to get our SMEs and our micro businesses off the ground. And you see, the problem is we're a very small country, and the 2.5 pillar banks. It's mind-boggling what they're doing at the moment. They are closing down small businesses every day of the week, hundreds and thousands of small businesses, even in cases where the original owners or operators have offered more money than the actual vulture funds are offering. Nobody can answer this. Why are our banks selling small businesses out from under us? And where do we get alternative funding? And if I could just mention what Transparency International, it's a world-respected organisation, had to say about the banking collapse in Ireland. It said that legal corruption played a role in the poor regulation and weak oversight of financial institutions, which led to Ireland's banking crisis. And Transparency International goes on to say that legal corruption, which takes many forms and includes cronyism, patronage and state capture, when powerful groups manipulate policy formation to serve their own interests rather than the public interest. Now, that is the essence of the problem we have in Ireland. And that's why I asked the question earlier about the Irish Strategic Investment Fund and the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland. Because what is happening is this money and the proposed money is not filtering through to where it's needed, at the small and medium enterprise. The Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, for example, is handled through AIB and Bank of Ireland. And the banking sector operates as sort of a credit cartel through the Irish Credit Bureau. So there's very few people in Ireland that haven't been in trouble with banks and haven't got black marks on them. And they're expected to go and look for strategic banking corporation money, which is being delivered by Bank of Ireland and AIB. And the Irish Strategic Investment Fund, for example, that is getting funds from Europe and lending these funds on to third parties, to further investors. But they in turn are loaning the money at 12 and 15%, and some of the money is being loaned at up to 20%. And it doesn't work. Small and medium enterprises in Ireland are paying probably the highest input costs in Europe. The cost base is way too high, and they certainly can't afford to pay 12, 15 and 20% interest. Now, there is another way, but it appears that we in Ireland don't seem to want to talk about it. And it's to introduce public banking and community banking. And it's very impressive what we had to hear about Germany. We do know that Germany has over 70% of the German economy is funded by public and community banking. It's fantastic. In Ireland, 95% of our banking is done through 2.5 pillar banks, all of which have one thing in common: incompetence and greed, and they all went bust. So while I'm welcoming all the news that we've heard today, we will not thrive in Ireland. Our SME sector and our micro sector will not thrive unless and until we bring in public and community banking. The credit unions that we already have in place, the credit unions could be a big part of this, but the question arises: why do successive governments limit credit unions? They're applying dissimilar conditions to similar transactions. And why is that? The credit unions in Ireland have 5 billion that they can't lend because they're restricted. And what we would ask is that, and we'd like to follow this up with some of the people that we've met here today, is that perhaps somebody will help us to look at the structures in Ireland and encourage the powers that be to introduce a low-cost, basically non-profit making banking and community banking sector, which will bring it will bring our rural Ireland. It'll help it to prosper, and it will be a central plank in developing our indigenous business going forward in Ireland. We believe it's vital, and we need to marry that into what you're all providing here in Europe for us. And if we can do that, the future is good. I'm happy to take questions at any stage.
Si, monsieur.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Maye. You're presenting a banking system that seems to be stumbling against difficulties and finding it hard to give these loans to SMEs because also the interest rates are prohibitively high, maybe because of the risk, I don't know.